First off, I want to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of the masters, the mercy of the grand predecessors, transmitting masters, and everyone here for this opportunity to talk about the seven Taoist masters. I mentioned the seven Taoist masters in last week's class. Actually, one of the stories was from, or two of them, actually. Okay, so, but it's worth kind of reading, actually, this book. So this is actually, I mean, I guess the left picture kind of depicts the seven Taoist masters, and then the right one is it's the cover of the book, the English translation book. Okay, so, yeah, you can get this book, and you know, it's a good read. It's like a novel, actually, but I mean, the stories, there might be, you know, I don't know how accurate everything is, but they are real people. Okay, they're real Taoist masters, real cultivators. All right. Okay, so this it's a novel. I mean, it's written in the middle of the Ming Dynasty. Okay, so maybe around the 1500 time frame, but the author is unknown. Whoops, sorry, no screen. Okay, what happened? Okay, you guys can see the screen now? Okay, thanks. All right, sorry, let me just... Okay, I was just showing the picture of this is the book cover of the English translation of that, of the story, of the book. Okay, all right, so the story kind of takes place during the Southern Song and Yuan dynasty, so yeah, you can say around 1200 to 1127 to around 1368, sometime during that period. Although there is some oddity in there because somewhere in there Bodhidharma shows up, but he's like not during this time. He's earlier. But anyways, so that's why this is a novel, I guess. But so the Taoist masters, there's one. Okay, so the seven Taoist masters, these are the ones who become the masters, but they have their master who taught them. And so this Taoist master teaches the seven disciples how to attain immortality by the practice of, this is, you know, back then it was like, this is the Taoist alchemy, I guess, the internal alchemy, the way they practice, the cultivation. And then, so it basically, this talks about the journey of self-mastery, enlightenment, and immortality for the master and his seven disciples. Okay. So this is the master, okay, Wong, Master Wong, Cong Yang, okay. So, and then his seven disciples are here, and we'll talk about each of them. Okay, so I actually last week mentioned these two, Liu Changsen and Hao Taigu. Okay, so, but anyways, all right. Actually, the story kind of spends most of its time talking, of course, about Master Wong, and then these first two, Ma Danyang and Sun Bu'er, and then also the last one, Chu Changchun. Okay, most of the time is on the story is on them. Okay, all right. So this is kind of like background on Master Wong. So basically, he's studying as a scholar, and he wanted to be a government official, but he failed his exams, and so he gave that up, and he decided to train himself in martial arts, and kind of took up the cause of the poor and the oppressed. So he's kind of well known. He has a good reputation in his village. But on one winter day during a snowstorm, two beggars appear at the door of his residence. And so, let's see. Okay, so Master Wong, he invited them in, right, to stay until the storm passed, and gave them room and food and all that. But he was taking care of business. So it was only on the third day that he was able to kind of spend some time and talk with them. So, you know, and it's basically the storm had just passed. So as the two beggars were about to leave, he shows up with some food and wine and, you know, invited them to sit down and drink and talk and eat and talk with them. So, you know, he kind of got to know them pretty well, and they kind of got along very well, actually. And, you know, but then it was time for them to leave. So, let's see. Well, actually, Mr. Wong, he thought that, you know, he could just help them, maybe provide for the, you know, give them some money to get them back on their feet and all that. But actually what the beggars, well, they gave their names as, one of them is Gold is Heavy, and Empty Mind Chang was the other one. Empty Mind Zhang. Okay. And then they said, well, you know, we're used to living without the weight of gold, and when there is food, we eat. When we are tired, we find a place to sleep. We would rather be like the wild geese, flying free, than like the domestic hen that never frees itself from material needs. Okay, so obviously this is not typical what a beggar would say normally. But actually, you know, if you think about it, I mean, they have like no worries, even though they're like appear to be like beggars. And actually, when you know, this is kind of like you know, I describe, say, it's kind of like describing an infant or baby infant, right? So, like when we cultivate, right, we also say that we should become pure and innocent like a baby. And isn't that true? The baby or infant has no worries, has no attachments. They just very, you know, natural, just fulfill their basic needs. So it's just like these two beggars were saying. Okay. All right. So as he sends them off, he kind of accompanies them to the edge of the village, and there was a bridge there. But, you know, although he enjoyed their company, and, but he was kind of reluctant to continue, to cross that bridge with them. But they were saying, yeah, you know, riches and fortunes will disappear. You know, all your best clothes, they become rags, right? So the two of them, they've left the material world. So we do not owe anybody anything, and we do not care about success and failure. What we have, robbers cannot take away, right? And it says, we are poor, and yet we possess the greatest treasure of all. So, you know, hearing this, Mr. Wong, he was very intrigued, and, you know, so he continued with them. Yeah, see, actually, I mean, what they have, right, you can say, you know, see, they don't have any material things, so people can't take it away. What they have is internal, right? It's like virtues, right? And their own, yeah, you can say merits too, but virtues, for the most part, is what they have, which cannot be taken away. You know, you can also say that they also have true freedom, right? No attachment to the world, to material things. So that's also kind of like the greatest treasure as well. All right, so yeah, they crossed the bridge, and then I don't know. Basically, you know, he sees that they're sitting at this table having food and wine. So he joins them. He takes some drinks, and then he starts feeling lightheaded. And then they said, you know, the two beggars, right? They say, "Oh, why don't you join us? We're going to climb this mountain and see this. There's a beautiful lake at the top of the mountain." So they go up there, and at the top of the mountain, there's this lake where there were seven golden lotus flowers in the lake. And he thought, wow, they're really beautiful. And so the empty mind Zhang, he walked into the lake, and he picked those 7 flowers, the lotus flowers, and brought it back and gave it to Mr. Wong. He says, "Take care of these flowers. They are the spirits of the 7 enlightened souls destined to be your disciples. Their karma is tied to yours. When you meet them, remember Gold is Heavy and Empty Mind Chang, and the 7 flowers we have entrusted to your care." Okay, so And then he also said that, they would then, meet kind of after 3 months. And so I don't know. So Mr. Wong, he kind of headed back, and he kind of actually, he stumbled down the mountainside, and he fell unconscious. But okay, so later on, he was discovered by his servants. Okay, they came looking for him and found him to be sleeping at that bridge, where and they brought him back. So, anyways, upon recovering, he found himself actually back in his mansion, and he didn't realize how he got there. But okay, so later on, he realized the meaning of their names. Okay, so gold is heavy, right? Those two Chinese characters, Jing and Zong, right? When you combine them, is Zong. I mean that's a surname. Okay, so and an empty mind, Chang, that character, without the heart or its insides, right, then becomes Li. Okay, so they are the two of the 8 immortals, right? Zong Chen and Li Dongbing, okay, the pure yang immortal, which was mentioned in last week's class too about the tests that he endured. Okay, so these two 8 immortals, and they came to kind of guide Mr. Wong, who later would become a master himself, to go and teach those 7 disciples. Okay, so when the 3rd month came, right, he went to the bridge to meet the immortals, right? He says, "Great immortals, it is an honor to see you again. Forgive my stupidity and inability to recognize you when we last met, right? Today, I'm fortunate to see you again. I hope you will instruct me and lead me to the Tao." Okay, so yeah, so obviously he has this foundation, and he's a seeker of the Tao. Okay, so because he recognized who they were now, so their appearance changed, and they were no longer looking like beggars. They looked like kind of their original appearance, with one as basically, how they're normally depicted. We see. Okay, all right. So then, immortal Ri. Okay, so Ri Dongbing, right? He's then trying to impart his teachings to Mr. Wong, right? Says, because in the past they used to, right, this Tao, the practice, of course, is different, or the cultivation is kind of different than it is today. Okay, so back then they taught them the alchemy, and also they taught them also these abilities to, we call them magical abilities, but they have some special abilities that they can do. Okay, do things. But it says in these times, people, they don't have such a strong willpower. I am afraid that if they are given instructions in Taoist magic, they would use them for personal power and forget about cultivation of the heart and body. As a result, they would end by being still further away from attaining the Tao, right? So it says, cultivate your heart. So he's going to teach them internal alchemy first, and cultivate your heart, for your original heart can see what is real, right? So these are the teachings of the real truth. Remember them well. Okay, so basically you have to start with the foundation, which is the inside. Okay, so the internal. It's also, part of this internal cultivation is, it's basically taming of the heart and mind. Okay, so the real truth, the real is that which is true and not false. Every person has a true heart. If true heart strays, however, then it becomes untrue to its own nature. Okay, so that's like typically our human heart can stray from its own true, our own true nature. So every person has true feeling. When true feeling strays from the original nature, it becomes untrue. A feeling that originates from the true heart is true feeling. Feeling that has self-importance in it is untrue. So again, the self-importance comes from the ego, and so have to get rid of the ego as well. All right. So the intention that is calculating and scheming is untrue. Right? The true heart tends towards goodness. Original nature is the manifestation of the natural way of heaven. So everyone, we all have this original true nature. And so it's when it's manifested, that is the way of heaven. So, but the problem is humans, we don't follow that true nature or the original nature, right? We follow the human nature, which can be corrupted. And so, corrupted by what? Our desires, attachments, temperament. Okay. So these things, affect us. And so therefore we've actually deviated from the true nature. Okay. So where there is ego, the true heart cannot emerge. It is only in stillness and the absence of craving that original nature can be cultivated. Right. So stillness, right? So, and that's why in the past, the practice was to do meditation, right? To, still the mind and also, of course, to cut off. That's why they typically, they go out begging and, that they give up, material things, so that they don't have any desires, okay, craving for, for material stuff or any, other things, any forms. Okay, so if your action is not sincere, then the true feeling is absent. If your words are false, then true intention is absent. If you want to cultivate the Tao, you must eradicate attachments that lead true intention and true feeling astray. Let original nature, rather than your ego, guide your actions, right? Do not waver in your pursuit of goodness, right? Then your true feeling, true intention will emerge, and you will not be far from the Tao. So these are teachings of the real truth. Okay, so this is not. I mean, this is pretty much the principles that we always talk about. All right. Okay. So now. Okay, so then, he also, imparted teachings of, internal alchemy to Master Wong, but we're not going to talk about internal alchemy here. Okay, so, so it says after you've attained the Tao, right, he's instructed him to go to Shandong province, to gather his 7 disciples. Okay, so, and then he tells him to remember to go where the land meets the sea, where horses are plenty and towns nestle in the rolling hills. Okay, so, now, Mr. Wong, okay, so after hearing the teachings, right, and instructions from Immortal Ri, he kind of wondered how he could kind of practice, perform, do the practice and cultivate, because he's like, in charge of, he has a business and all that. And he's very busy normally, and he says, he'll be disturbed a lot. So, he came up with a plan to pretend having a stroke. Okay, and he was acting as if he lost his memory and ability to talk. So, when he did that, after a while, basically his family, the household and the servants, they all start leaving him alone because he's kind of acting kind of crazy too. Well, a little bit, but, anyway, so then he was left alone and he could practice. Okay. So he practiced for 12 years, and he basically attained immortality, in that time. So he basically completed his practice. And his spirit, he could leave his body at will, right? Now, he also gained certain, what we mentioned earlier, these magical abilities, like he can travel through solid objects, things like that, okay? All right, so one day, he just left the mansion and gave up everything that he had, right? His wealth, his social status, and he traveled to Shandong, okay, in search of his 7 disciples. Now, unfortunately, on the way, the people that he met, he discovered that there were 2 types. They either desired fame or wealth. Okay, so very materialistic, and that kind of discouraged him. And so he kind of, found a mountain cave somewhere and he would just kind of go in there and meditate and wait until the time was right. But the immortals, again, those two immortals, they visited him again and reminded him that he has to fulfill his mission. Okay. Basically, so then, you know, that he decided, okay, he's got to go out, and he went over to Ninghai, and he dressed like a beggar. So, you know, you see kind of a theme here that in the past, anyways, these enlightened people, they typically try to use a form of a beggar or appear as a beggar when they are trying to, you know, carry out their mission, basically. Okay. All right, so when he went to Ninghai, he kind of settled there. He continued to refine his abilities, and he had, you know, these transcendental powers, right? So he could see the future. He can also see into people's hearts and minds. Okay, so now he then realized also that what immortality meant by the words, you know, where there are plenty of horses, you know, that's basically he would gather the 7 disciples at the Ma mansion. So the Ma, that's a person's surname, but it means horse. Okay, so basically he stayed close to the mansion, and he patiently waited for, you know, the opportunity. So in the meantime, Mr. Ma, who's, you know, of the mansion, and his wife Sun, okay, they had a discussion about life and, you know, what was to happen to the family legacy since they didn't have any children. He's wealthy. He has businesses and all that, and so they didn't know what, you know. He was wondering what's going to happen to all that, you know. But his wife convinced him that, you know, all material possessions, recognition, etc., will just basically fade away and disappear. So they agreed to, and, you know, his wife also had kind of read some of the Taoist, you know, books or whatever. So she knew about some of the principles and all that. And so she agreed, they agreed to look for a Taoist master to teach them, right? So they decided, well, you know, forget about all this wealth. Let's cultivate and seek immortality. Okay. So his wife, Sun, also noticed that there was a beggar in the streets who didn't look like an ordinary person. And she thought that maybe he was enlightened. So they decided to invite him to be their teacher. All right. Now also, you know, Master Wong, he didn't make the first move, right? So he didn't come knocking on their door. He felt that, you know, if he did that, then he was kind of be forcing the situation, and maybe, you know, the timing wouldn't have been right. So he kind of waited until they came looking for him. Okay. So basically, after, let's see. Oh, okay. So yeah, so here's a quote here. So, those who attempt to cultivate Tao begin with taming the heart and mind. When the heart and mind is tamed, the intentions will be sincere. Okay, so again, it's starting from within the heart and mind. That's the key to everything, right? So, because when we say we cultivate the Tao, cultivated Tao is cultivating the heart and mind. Okay. Okay. So basically, so they invited the beggar in, and Mr. Ma, you know, he tried to offer him, say, oh, okay, so I'm gonna, you know, you can come in and you can stay in our mansion, and I'll take care of you. But Master Wong, he didn't know he was, you know, he got angry at that. And so his wife Sun, on the other hand, you know, talked about, non-attachment, having no desires, right? You know, talking all the right stuff. And Master Wong, you know, she asked Master Wong to be their teacher, and he agreed. Okay, so, now the weird thing is that Master Wong asked, Mr. Ma to sign over all his property, wealth, and businesses. And at first he was kind of reluctant, but then again, his wife kind of convinced him that, you know, it was is the right thing to do. Okay, but there was a whole story behind this, which he has to convince his clan to agree to it too. Okay, but anyways, yeah, that happened. Okay, but Master Wong, he wanted to use the thing to basically create a Taoist retreat and a learning center at his mansion. Okay. Okay, so Master Wong, he then takes them as his first two disciples. So he's talking about, curing the cause. So you have to cure the cause of the, problem, not the symptoms, right? So you want to get rid of the sickness of spirit and body. You must get to the cause, right? The primary cause of ill health is craving, so desire, okay? It creates the obstacles to health. These obstacles are desire. He lists 4, right? So liquor, basically sexual desire, greed for riches, and bad temper. So this is very similar to the 3 poisons, right? It's probably, you can say it's kind of another way to kind of look at the 3 poisons. All right. So then he says, Confucianists say, right, the riches that do not rightfully belong to me, I see as empty as the empty clouds, as the floating clouds. Take control of your reason and you will not lose your temper. The Buddhists say, do not crave rewards. Virtue comes from the ability to resist provocation. The Taoists say, know the illusion of material goods. Cultivate compassion and your temper will be calm. Take these words of advice and you'll be able to eradicate bad temper and desire for riches. Okay. So basically, and also, the Confucianists, they say, right, there's like the 4 do nots, right? Basically, don't see what's improper, don't do what's improper, etc. And then the Taoists, they actually say, look, you look, but you do not see. Okay, so basically you see things, everything is empty. Okay, there's nothing, and it doesn't affect you. All right. And then in Buddhists, they would say, basically forget about the 4 images, basically, right? The 4 images or the 4 marks of existence, right? And subject-object duality. Okay, trying to get rid of those. Okay. So, then Master Wong talks about, how to get rid of the 4 obstacles to health. Liquor, sexual desire, riches, and bad temper, right? You have to cultivate the heart. Once the heart is tamed, then these cause of the illness will disappear. Okay, so first we need to awaken to the fact that we have fallen prey to the obstacles, right? So kind of admit that, recognize that, we are subject to these, we have these obstacles. Then we need to understand what the obstacles are and their causes. Then finally, we need to act intuitively, that is to act spontaneously from the heart that is tamed of heart and craving. So that's from our true heart, from that Tao heart, okay? From the untainted or corrupted heart. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about the individual people here. So Swinburne. Okay, so these are actually the names using here are their Tao names, which means these are the names given by the master when he accepted them as their disciples. So this is not their original names, but okay. So this you can say it's the Tao name or their cultivator name. And Sunbur means she's basically single-minded. So she so once her mind is set on something, she's going to do it. Okay. So upon meeting Master Wong, right? So then this is what she said. So, sir, prosperity and fortune are with you, right? No worries, attachments, freedom, and wander in freedom and leisure. So no material goods hold you, right? Is this not fortune, right? Heart is clear and calm. You're not disturbed by craving and desire. Is this not prosperity, right? So, but, most people think they're fortunate when they're rich, but they don't know that it imprisons them. Many think that they're prosperous, but they spend their time worrying about losing their wealth, right? So, but in the end, when you die, you can't take take that fortune with them. So, but she's talking to Master Wong, says, your fortune and prosperity cannot be taken away. So this, again, similar to what the immortals were talking about to Master Wong himself earlier. Okay, so this is kind of what convinced Master Wong to stay and to accept them as as his disciples. Okay. All right. Okay, so so actually later on, because then he started teaching them, and teaching them some basic techniques and practices. And then so she started practicing on her own, basically, within the mansion. And the thing is, she was kind of stuck on, she thought that was it. That was the way to do it. That was the only way. And then so she would just, meditate in her room. But later on, Master Wong kind of chided her that, she was kind of stuck in her way of cultivation. So that's why she wasn't making any progress. Right. And, Master Wong actually appeared to her in her room, kind of like, he wasn't physically there, but he appeared, and she thought, he physically showed up, but, he showed up a few times to warn her that, what she was doing was not the way to immortality. And, she was upset, of course, in seeing him there, but, and she brought that up with, Mr. Ma, and Ma said that, pointed out that, well, her intelligence was actually an obstacle. She realized that, and she became humble and learned, whatever there was to learn. Okay. And so, later on, when she had cultivated, she improved, and, Master Wong then asked her which of the three vehicles she aspired to. Okay, so again, these are kind of like the three vehicles that we talk about in cultivation. The great vehicle is not attached to life and death. The heart is void of form and free from dust. No thoughts or feelings tie one to the material plane. Okay, and then, and of course, middle vehicle, to purify the heart and let the original nature shine. Basically, they do the chanting. They do a lot of chanting, and then maybe they're vegetarian on certain days. In a lower vehicle, they just do good deeds and they're contented and peace with themselves. Okay, so and of course she chooses the first vehicle. She says she aspires to the first vehicle, but Master Wong didn't think that she could do it. Basically, because he said that she would have to travel to this other place, Luoyang, and to cultivate. But it would be very difficult, getting there and maybe being in there itself, that, she would face a lot of hardships and danger. Partly because of her beauty, right? So she's actually, she's very pretty and all that. And so obviously she would encounter, a lot of danger along the way. And so she decided to basically sacrifice her beauty, by disfiguring her face. Okay, so basically she she basically, when you boil you have oil, right, in a pan, heating that up, and then if water gets in there, it splatters. Okay, so that's what she did, and so basically kind of disfigured her face with all the splatter on her face. Okay, so basically, so that was a big sacrifice, and for her, but she was willing to do it. And she basically, when she got to Luoyang, she kind of, again, dressed like a beggar, and, as she was kind of acting like a crazy woman, and so that people would leave her alone so that she could cultivate in peace. All right. Right. And then so basically, Master, Wong kind of agreed to let her go, and, he knew that she would be able to attain immortality. Okay. Let's see. Right. So Master Wong also, was explaining the importance of dissolving the ego and cutting ties this was Master Wong. He was talking to actually to Mr. Ma, but although you can say this was applied to Sun Bu as well. Okay, so but then at the same time, his spirit also appeared to Sun Bu, so that's kind of freaked her out. Well, she didn't know that he was here talking to Ma Danyang, but anyway, so says the one has to learn to see through the illusions of material things. Okay, but Sun Bu, she spent 12 years in Loyang, and it was difficult. Again, she was a beggar all the time, and as a crazy, acting as kind of a crazy woman in public. But she, through the hardship and practice, she abandoned her ego basically through discipline of mind and body, and she attained immortality. Okay, so, or what we might call, she attained the Tao. Okay. All right. So her husband, Ma Danyang. Okay, so his Tao name, that's his Tao name again. So it's Bright Yang. Okay, that's the literal thing. So when they were discussing, about the family, the situation, Sun Bu kind of reassured him that he had sufficient foundation to cultivate, because he wasn't sure he would be able to cultivate well enough. Right? She said, we are in human form, shows that we have that foundation. Okay, so, and then, so foundations are not solely dependent on deeds in previous lives, and one may also strengthen the foundation by performing good deeds in the current lifetime. Okay, but basically, he's saying that, just like today, we have to, cherish the fact that we are human, that we are, we have this human life, that we are able to perhaps, to encounter the Tao, to learn about the Tao, and to practice, to cultivate the Tao. And very fortunate in this time that we can actually attain the Tao in this one lifetime. Okay. But of course, back then it was a lot more difficult. All right. Okay, so now his sacrifice, he had to give up basically all his property and wealth to Master Wong for basically building the Taoist retreat and supporting the Taoist cultivators who came to learn, okay, and cultivate. But he was willing to do that. Okay, so now, Master Wong says, those who aspire to cultivate the Tao must first find their original nature. The original nature, right, is the original state of things, or they call it earlier heaven, right? So if original nature is not cultivated, feelings will be wild. The Tao is without form. You must dissolve your ego, for the ego is the source of form and attachment, right? So again, the key is we always say we have to get rid of that ego, okay? Right, so otherwise, because that will be the cause of all sorts of problems. And that is probably the biggest obstacle to successful cultivation. Okay. All right, so then now, so after the 12 years, now, I can't really go through the follow the storyline exactly, because talking about each individual one here. But okay, so after Sun Bu became immortal, she returned, in her immortal form to see Ma Danyang, see how he was doing. Now he was still at the mansion. He hadn't really left, and so she kind of pointed out that he was kind of living in comfort in his mansion, and even though he was able to kind of develop a certain level of abilities, but still he didn't make that much progress. And she pointed out that her progress was due to the 12 years of hardships, and so that kind of woke him up a little bit. And so he realized that, yeah, he needs to leave the mansion, leave this comfortable environment that he was in, and to go out and cultivate. And so he did. He left the mansion. He visited. Okay, so at that time, the Master Wong had already passed away. So he went to visit the grave of Master Wong, and that's where he met. He met up with one of the other disciples, Chu Changsun. Okay, so now he admonished, because Chu Changsun, he was there. He stayed at ever since they buried the master. He stayed there, when Master Ma got there, he saw that Chu Changsun was still there, and he told him to let go of his attachments. Okay, so they traveled together, and once they were caught in a winter storm, they took shelter in the ruins of a shrine. Right, they shared a meditation cushion, right, sitting back to back. Now Chu Changsun, okay. Now, Chu Changsun, he's like the youngest of these 7 disciples. Okay, so he kept thinking that Ma was not used to hunger and hardships, so he tried to go get food for him. Now, actually, Chu Changsun, he does these things. He's actually pretty considerate of others. He's thinking for others, like, they might need food. He'll try to get food for them. Things like that. Okay, so, but he couldn't get it himself. But he kept thinking about it, and eventually there's this one, the earth deity kind of appeared in a dream of a local villager and told him that there were these 2 monks in the shrine, and they didn't have food and drink for a few days, and so the villager, they came up and brought the food and drink to them. They ate, and then Chu Changsun, he mentioned that, it's interesting. This seemed like my thoughts, they came true. And so Master Ma, then Ma Danyang scolded him, saying that all he thought was, he kept thinking about food. So he says, those who seek the Tao must forget hunger, right? He had had enough with Chu Changsun, and he cut the meditation mat in half, and he took one half and he left. Okay, so. Right. Okay. Okay. So another of jumping back to Master Wong's teachings, right? So I have seen the intelligent and stupid and ignorant and well-educated. I've been called. Okay. So you may say that I am stupid, ignorant, and dull-witted. Says why? Because in my stupidity, I do not know how to desire and covet. Right. In my ignorance, I am not wrathful and impatient. Right? Because of my dull wits, I am incapable of fabricating schemes to outwit and outdo others. Being stupid and ignorant has made me impervious to the attraction of material things. Right? So he says, you might think it's strange, but I'm just merely teaching you to be stupid, ignorant, and dull-witted. Okay, so, from a normal person's point of view, when they hear this, they think, that's crazy, right? So, but actually, our holy teacher basically says the same thing. We have to be sasa. Right? We have to be kind of dull, or kind of basically, because people who are too smart, right? They're not willing to. They're stuck on the gain and loss. They're not willing to lose. They all want to gain, right? Things like that. So there are all these things. These things become they become obstacles. They're obstacles for us. So we have to kind of learn to kind of do the opposite. That's why cultivation is kind of like going against the stream, going against what most people are doing, because it's the opposite. What they're doing is leading them to this endless cycle of suffering, okay, and reincarnation. But so we have to kind of go the opposite direction, go against that grain, right? Okay, so to cultivate the Tao, right, we have to start with cultivating heart and mind again. All right. So we have to still the thoughts and calm the mind, tame the wildness in you until nothing can cause your mind to move. Okay. So, the mystery of the Tao is in the emptiness of the mind. Okay. So, If there is a trace of self-interest, the heart is still impure, and an obstacle still stands in the way between you and the Tao. Right? So we cannot be moved by any attachments, right? Only in the absence of attachments can stillness be cultivated. So, one of the things that qualities, I guess, if you will, of being enlightened is that the heart, the mind does not move, is not perturbed by anything. Okay, so it's unmoving, and so a couple of the tests that some of the tests that we talked about last week, basically those are tests of forbearance, I guess, but they're testing to see if our heart and mind moves. Okay. So it has to be very still and unmoving. Right. So Master Wong, he's talking about stillness, right? So it says true stillness is when a mountain crashes in front of you and you're not afraid. It is when a pretty woman or a handsome man stands in front of you and your desires are not roused. Okay. So, again, we unmoved. All right. So it says, in stillness, like a parent can patiently teach a wayward child. In stillness, an elder sibling can instruct a younger. In stillness, husband and wife can live in harmony. In stillness, friends can open their minds to each other. In stillness, the ruler can attend to the welfare of the ruled. Okay, so thus stillness is the center of activity, yet in activity there is stillness. So that is, it sounds, if we don't understand, then it sounds contradictory or paradoxical. But actually, it doesn't mean that there's, the stillness means no activity. It just means, because how can you have activity and no activity together? The stillness it's not being perturbed. It's not being, basically we gotten rid of the ego, gotten rid of the desires, attachments. And you can say, then they don't give rise to those emotions that affect us. Okay. So, that's basically what it is. Okay. Right. Okay. So I'm not going to read all this here, but, okay. So, okay. So actually Master Wong, right, he knew that only 6 of his disciples, would eventually attain the Tao. Okay, so that's excluding the Sun Bu, because he already knew that she was going to attain the Tao, and the 6 remaining ones who were there at the mansion, right? The rest of them would sooner or later abandon the path. For some, their enthusiasm would wear out. Others would not have the discipline, and for most, the attractions of the material world would prove stronger than their motivation to cultivate the Tao. But he still gave this lesson so that, they can still benefit from the teachings and lead virtuous lives, even if, they're no longer cultivating. But, this is kind of also true, basically today as well, a lot of people come to receive the Tao, and they may still come to the temple, and they may even have attended classes, things like that. But, they're still, they're not, not everyone is going to, basically complete the path. Okay. Fulfill the, become an immortal or attain the Tao as a result. Right. Okay. So after this, basically, Master Wong said he was going away, to visit some friends, right, for a year, and then he was accompanied by 4. Well, actually, it turned out to be 5 of the disciples. Only Ma Danyang stayed back at the mansion, and basically, this was kind of you could say that this was kind of a test. Basically, he didn't really go. He wasn't intending to really go away for too long. He was kind of bringing them along to test them. And so basically realized that these disciples were still, they weren't ready to, they were still seeking comfort, if you will, along the way. And so, but, in the end, so, before the journey, they decided to turn back. Master Wong, he was about to punish them, but Chu Changcun, he pleaded to take the punishment. He said it was his idea to, they started a fire to keep warm and all that. And then the others, and Master Wong said, okay, so you're going to get, because each of them were supposed to get like 10 or 20 lashes, each. He said, okay, so you're going to get all of it, all the punishment. And then the others, they pleaded, that they all, that you should be spared and they should all be punished. And then so, Master Wong kind of spared them, because he saw that, they were all very sincere cultivators, and they also showed some brotherly love among them. Okay, they were willing to sacrifice for the others. Okay, so basically they went back. They went back to the mansion. Okay, so returning to the mansion, then Master Wong saw that students who came back were insincere or not disciplined enough. And he thought, well, these people are here because their interest was roused at the moment, or because they are afraid of dying, or because they are following the crowd. Right? None of them have the discipline and sincerity to cultivate the Tao. If they continue to stay, they will distract those who are sincere. So I must find a way to make them leave. Okay. This sounds kind of like Dharma class sometimes. People, they seem to be excited for the moment, but then later on they're gone. Okay, you don't see them again. They're not interested. Okay, so basically, Master Wong, then he kind of faked an illness, and it seemed pretty serious. Even they called a doctor and tried to they gave him medicine, but nothing worked. And so most of those students, they thought, wow, if the master can't even save himself, how can he save us? So eventually, after 2 days, they basically left, except for those 6 who remained. Okay, his true disciples. Okay, so then he announced to them that, the next day at 11 a.m., he would die, basically. He would leave the mortal realm. Okay, so then he left instructions to his disciples. Now, so this is the last kind of like the teachings, I guess he says, the dual cultivation of life and of original nature and mind is the essence of my teachings, right? So if you cultivate life only, your virtues will be incomplete. If you cultivate the mind only, your body will be impure. Therefore, you should balance your external and internal training. Externally, you must be careful with all your actions. Okay, be careful, like what you say, what you do, what you think, what you feel. And we have to watch our intentions. The mind should be empty of desires. Internally, we should dissolve all ideas of form. The techniques of cultivating the internals cannot be grasped through form. Right? The obstacles to training are laziness, impatience, and desire for results. Okay, so that's why a lot of people, they don't progress. Okay, so, but this is kind of similar to what we say today. I mean, we have internal and external cultivation, right? Although it's slightly different, a little bit different in how it's described here. But the same way is that, when it says, cultivate the life and then, and also cultivate the internal, the internal side, the mind, like we say, Xing Ming. Okay, so these two that we have to cultivate, right? So, but there's a balance. Okay, so we have to cultivate both. We can't just do one or not the other. All right, and let's see. What's the next? All right. So basically, he gave instructions that when he died, that they would carry his coffin. Don't spend any money on any funeral, whatever. Just carry his coffin to to Mount Zhongnan in Shenxi, and to bury him wherever, the ropes that they're carrying him with, his coffin with, whether they break. Okay. So they did that. All right. Okay. Okay. So, basically these were the Master Wong's last words to these, his disciples here. So for Liu Changsen, right, he says, his mind, he hasn't emptied his mind of forms and sexual attraction, right? So this last week we talked about him. Hao Tai Gu, okay, also, he has to wander east and west and won't attain down until he's climbed the cliff edge mountains, right? Tan Chang Zhen, okay, so he would meet with the one named Ku, and basically it will show that he still clings to preconceptions. And then Wang Yang, okay, so his powers will not mature until he meets the one named Yao. And then Chu Changcun, his hardships will not end until he reaches the river that flows over many boulders. Okay, so, all right. So, Hao Tai Gu, okay, so again, we talked about the story last week. Basically, well, his Tao name means the ancient way. Okay. Now he had an obstacle. Basically, he would meditate all the time, right? And so, once he was meditating under this bridge, and he saw this other person who was kind of grinding the stones, polishing the stones, right? He says, what are you doing? How can you polish stones into a mirror? So then that person says, you're telling me that if I stubbornly sit here and polish my stones, I will never make a mirror. What about you? Do you think that by sitting stubbornly in the cave, you can become an immortal, right? Because he always, sits there and meditates. And so basically, the sage turned out to be a sage because, he turned around and disappeared, but he was trying to teach him something, right? That, to stubbornly sit and meditate all the time is called dead sitting. And this is also the same that, Master Wong was kind of, warning, Sun Bu as well, because she was doing the same thing. Okay. So, but basically, yeah, same story as last week. Said, he basically, then went off to the mountains but, still he was going to go there to meditate, but, he has to dig out, little caves, so that he can meditate. And every time he would dig one out, someone else showed up and claimed the cave. And, well, being a nice guy that he was, he just let them have it. So each time he dug out 72 caves over 10 years. And finally he attained immortality after all that. Basically, yeah. So, basically selfless giving, right? Relinquishment, giving it up. And without having any kind of attachment or any, remorse or any kind of, no anger, nothing. So that just, he finally proved himself. All right. Okay. So the next one, Tan Chang Zhen. Okay. So his Tao name means eternal enlightenment. I guess you can say that maybe he was a bit prideful or proud. Now, he had met Master Wong, before, it was years before, Master Wong went to the Ma mansion. Okay. So, and he taught him, certain practices. At that time, he was quite ill, and Master Wong taught him, how to improve his immunity and regain his health. And sure enough, it helped him. And he recovered, his health. So, he had heard about, Master Wong, the news have gotten out, about this, retreat. And so he came looking for him. Anyways. All right. So, so he also had to give up his comfortable life, to return to cultivating as a begging monk. So basically after leaving the Ma mansion, he found his way to, this other village, where there was, Ku. Okay. This person named Ku, right? And, now Ku this person was also looking for a master. And so, he accepted, let him in, and he accepted him as his disciple. However, he found out that this person, Ku, was not really ready for the rigorous training and cultivation, that would be required. Okay. So basically after a month, he kind of left. So after he left, basically, he met with one of the other disciples, Wong Yiyang, and they both traveled southwest into the mountains, and where they continued to cultivate, and said that they became immortals there. Okay, so but actually, actually, when he tried to leave the Ku mansion, basically, the Ku wouldn't let him go, and so he had to kind of come up with a way to kind of leave. And he started flirting with the servant girl, and he did this a few times, and finally Ku said, "Oh, okay, yeah, better let him go." All right, so basically, these cultivators, these masters, I mean, they had to go about doing some crazy stuff sometimes to to do what they needed to do, and so they weren't afraid of the reputation or anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, that's something, when we're cultivating, we sometimes have to do what we have to do, and no matter what. Okay. All right. So the next one, Wang Yuyang. Okay. So again, his down name is Jade Yang. Okay. So, he's kind of more competitive person. Now, okay. So, basically after he had left the Ma mansion, he went and, he came to this place where, this Yao mansion, right? Remember the words of the Master Wong telling them, okay, so after meeting, at the Yao mansion, right? So it all came true. There is this, self-professed master, okay? Self-professed master, Hun Yuan, at the Yao mansion. And, he was a fake, actually. But, there was some competition. Basically there was another Buddhist, abbot, from the local temple who kind of, because this Hun Yuan, he could kind of debate, but the abbot in the temple, he couldn't really, out debate him. So he thought, well, it'd be good if, Wang Yuyang kind of debated him and showed him, who put him in his place, basically. Right. So there was a competition that ensued, and finally, revealing that, he was actually a fake. I mean, he didn't really, but yet, Wang Yuyang, he did not, say anything bad about him. He kind of said, oh, because he was old, because they did like a meditation competition, and, saying, oh, I'm younger and therefore I could, do it longer, things like that. So basically only had some kind words for him. So that shows a true cultivator, right? And then so after leaving the Yao mansion, right, he visited Liu Changsen in the brothel, right? Okay, so we'll get to him. And then he told him that, okay, so he needed to accompany someone to the immortal realm. Okay, so that was Tang Changzhen. Okay, so all right, so they both became immortals. All right, so next, Liu Changsen. We did talk about him also last week. Again, his down name is Eternal Life. The obstacle that he had to overcome is sexual desire. Okay, so one day he had a dream, right? He felt that his cultivation was complete already. So he, in that dream, he made the astral journey to the palace of the Empress of Heaven. Okay, so there he, there are, the court ladies in there, and the attendants of the Empress, and they were beautiful, and so he kind of admired them. And so when the Empress noticed that, he angrily sent him back to say, yeah, you have to get rid of these desires, go back and cultivate. So he did, he did that. And, now he came across, Tan Changzhen, okay, so who told him a story of this sage, previously, who indulged himself in, sexual desires to, basically he to meet, just like fight fire with fire, right? So he kind of faced those desires head on. So that's why he went to a brothel to cultivate, he wanted to basically, see everything as being empty. Okay, so there's he sees the beautiful woman as there's no, he sees them as empty, so doesn't arouse desires in him. Okay, so basically, yeah, he kind of, you can say, maybe gave up certain external respect by going to a brothel, but he was able to achieve that emptiness, I guess, of mind. Okay, so he was able to see everything as being empty. All right. Okay, so yeah, so after that, basically after he left the brothel, then he was basically on his way to becoming immortal as well. All right, so because this is the thing that he needed to overcome. All right, and then Chu Tang-sun. Okay, so actually, the book, the story, most of, a big chunk is about him, and also about like the Master Wong and Ma Danyang and Sun Bu. Okay, so now, so his name means eternal spring. Okay, so when he was young, I guess he lost his parents, and he was being raised by his two older brothers. Okay, so but he would, even when he was young, he said, fame and wealth are impermanent. True pursuit of knowledge should not be directed toward material gains. Right? We are born in this world with a purpose, and the purpose is not to fight for wealth and fame. Fame and fortune are like dust. People think that material goods are everything, but I see them as ripples on the water or clouds in the sky. We may possess them for a while, but we must discard them when we die. So it's pretty enlightened thinking for a young person. Okay. All right. Now, initially, when he went to seek Master Wong at the Ma Mansion, Master Wong initially refused to accept him as a student, right? And he told Ma Danyang that, the reason why is that if Chu Tang-sun took this path, cultivated on this path of immortality, he would suffer greatly and risk leaving the path with having misgivings and regret, and thus maybe hurting his karma. Okay, so he might get some karmic retributions from that. So Master Wong was kind of reluctant to let him become his disciple, but eventually he did let him. Okay, basically, he tends to be impatient and can be stubborn as well. Now he was the youngest of the disciples, and so Master Wong seemed to be kind of especially hard on him, but the reason was to temper his heart through hardships, because, being young, he didn't have as much experience, and so he hasn't been through a lot of the hardships that the other ones have been through. And so, he had to test him even more. But despite these tests, he never got angry. And he was still, he wanted to pursue this path. Okay. So after, now, obviously now he's, then became the last one. So the others all became immortals. And so he, was kind of left on his own, in the end. Okay. So, now he remembered what Ma Danyang told him to cultivate emptiness in his thinking. So then he wrote a poem. Let my mind forget about eating and drinking, right? Because remember, he always seemed to be thinking about that. If I think of comfort and riches, let my bones and tendons wither. If I think of food and water, let my mouth be plagued with boils. Let my body be an empty vessel where nothing can be stored. Okay, so basically, let me see. Oh. All right. Well, yeah, he would actually endure a lot of hardships. Let me see. We'll get into some of these things here. All right. So when he one day, so he came across this mansion, and he was begging for food. All right. The servant gave him a bowl of food, but the master of the house came out and took his bowl away. Right. He says, the master of the house, he was, I guess, a fortune teller. He says, I can tell from your looks that you are destined to die of hunger. Moreover, every morsel you eat will bring you more hardship. If it is the will of heaven, why not comply? Right? So in other words, just follow your fate, right? It says, on your face, it is written that you will not be able to accomplish your task. So he asked this fortune teller if he will become an immortal in this life. And it says, on your face is written that, you will not accomplish your task as long as you live. What is written by destiny must happen, however incredible it may sound when it is foretold. So, so basically, he kind of left thinking that, and actually the fortune teller kind of gave him two historical examples of people who kind of couldn't escape their fate of starvation. Okay. And so he was kind of resigned to it himself, this Chu Changchun. And so, he was looking for a place where he can die of starvation. So he went to this gorge, down to the river, at the riverbanks. Okay. So he sat on this boulder and he was waiting to starve to death, basically. So after 9 days of sitting there, but actually he was feeling fine. And on the 10th, and this is because of, basically his cultivation. He has a good, foundation in cultivation. So it didn't really bother him. But, and then on the 10th day, the river started flooding and the waters rose, to the top of the boulder. And he thought, well, if I don't die of hunger, then I'm willing to perish in the flood. Okay. So, basically he seems to have a death wish. All right. So, but then a branch kind of floated to his boulder and it stopped there. And he saw that there was a big peach attached to the branch. So he thought it was kind of strange, but then maybe this was meant for him to eat. So he ate it and it, just filled him with energy. And then the floodwaters kind of subsided and the sky cleared up. So he kind of took this as a sign as, well, he wasn't meant to die at that place anyways. Okay. All right. So he moved on. Then basically he went to this other place where he found a, kind of rundown shrine. He stayed there and he was meditating inside and again, waiting to die of hunger. Okay. So, basically, once again, strangely enough, on the 10th day, these robbers kind of appeared outside the shrine and, they made a fire. They were cooking their food. And then they're going to go inside the shrine to make, to clear up a space for them to rest. And they found him, there. And so they noticed that he was kind of dying of hunger. And so, these are robbers who have a bit of a conscience. Okay. So even though they're robbers, they thought, well, they understood this idea of karma and that they say, well, maybe if we do a good deed by helping this dying, monk that, that'll offset some of the bad karma they have from the robbing people. Okay. Or doing other bad deeds. So they try to feed him, and, they fed him some and, then Chu Changchun, he spit out some of the food. They thought he was being ungrateful. But then he kind of talked about, why he had this death wish, right? And then the leader of the robbers, tried to convince him, not to kill himself. And, he would give him some money to, go find another place to where he can meditate all he wants. But he refused, right? So it says, I do not deserve your gift because in my past life, I did not give freely to those in need, right? Therefore, in this lifetime, I need to repay those to whom I owe debts. If I receive anything from you, it will only add to my karmic retribution, right? The law of karma says that you must, what you do must be repaid. So if you take something from someone, then you have to give it back. If you help someone, then you will be repaid in full, right? Now, and then he also went on to say, you are robbers now, because in your previous lives you were robbed and treated unfairly, right? Those who you treated you unjustly in previous life are paying for it now. But, he's saying, if you continue to rob others after they have fully paid for their evil deeds, then you will reap karmic retribution for yourselves and your family. So in other words, if you overdo it, if you got everything that you should have gotten back, but then you got more, then of course, then that has to be paid back. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Now, these robbers, again, like I said, they have a conscience. They were pretty reasonable, and they realized that, wow, they didn't want to reap this severe karmic retribution. So they, decided to stop robbing and basically, use the money that they already got to kind of get into honest living. Okay, make an honest living. So you can see that even as Chu Tanzin is trying to kill himself, here he is transforming others, from an evil path to a good path, right? So that's like the ultimate. All right. So, okay. So next, then he tried to hang himself. Okay. So, this is basically, he thought, well, yeah, maybe he's not going to starve to death, but, he's going to hang himself. So, but then, a deity noticed, one of these star deities, they noticed that, he was going to try to hang himself. So he appeared as this herb gatherer and convinced him, not to hang himself. Basically, he said, the lines of destiny written on your face are not, because he told him about the story of the fortune teller. And so he says, they're not indicators of your destiny, for the true face is not your physical face, but the face of your mind, right? It is on the face of your mind that true destiny is written. The major determinant of destiny is in the heart. Our destiny is in our hands. Okay, so that we determine, it's not what someone tell us. Oh, the fortune teller tells us that, you're going to die, whatever age. We can change that. Okay. So, so you're supposed to be trained in the path of Tao, and yet you fell into the crutches of external forms and let your attachment to appearance ruin you. Our immortality is within the reach of everyone, but it is up to our own efforts to make it a reality. That's true. So, because we all have that Buddha nature, right, we can all become Buddhas, right, or reach immortality. But we have to put in the effort to do that. I mean, we have to be willing to, like I said before, do what it takes to make that happen. Okay. Right. It's not just going to happen by itself. All right. Okay, so another, you can say this probably like the final test that he got, major test, anyways. So basically, he came to this river after he left that place, and then this place, there was no bridge, and he didn't know how to cross the river. And then some local people say, "Oh, yeah, you can it's pretty shallow. You can just walk across, but you have to know where." And so he learned where you can cross the river, and so he decided to stay there to help people who maybe they're not locals, to help them be able to cross the river. Okay, and so he would help carry them across, and so he stayed there for 6 years, right? And then one day, basically, now he also realized that maybe this is the place that Master Wong told him, where his hardships would end. Okay. So one stormy day, right, these 3 policemen show up to cross the river. And, because of there's storm, there was a lot of rain. So the river was, running higher, deeper. Okay. So, and they were also carrying the head of a notorious bandit that they killed. And they were going to carry it to the court as evidence. Okay. Now, but normally the water is waist deep, but now it went up to his neck, so it was kind of difficult. But he carried 2 of the policemen across. Now the third one, he's carrying him across, but this one he was kind of afraid of the water, and so because of he wasn't careful, whatever, he fell off Chu Tanzin's back and fell into the water. Chu Tanzin managed to hoist him back up, but he lost. He was carrying the bag of that bandit's head, and he lost it in the water. Okay, so once he got across the river, he said, well, you may have saved my life now temporarily, but I lost that head. And if I go to the magistrate without the head, I'm going to be beheaded myself. And so Chu Jianxun then said, well, you can take my head, right? If that's what you need, just why not just cut off my head and smear some blood on it and take it to the magistrate? I mean, they probably don't know, can't really tell if it's that person anyways, right? But, he obviously, that policeman said, oh, I can't kill an innocent man. So Chu Jianxun says, oh, if you can't kill me, if you can't do it, then I'll do it myself. And he grabbed his sword and he was about to, basically, slash his own neck. And then there was this booming voice from heaven, came down, and says, don't kill yourself. We are the lords of the three seasons and keepers of the heavenly, earthly, and water realms. Your personal sacrifice has moved the lords of heaven. You now have an immortal body and spirit. In 7 years, you will ascend to the palace of the Empress of Heaven. Okay, so at that, because he was willing to sacrifice his life, that basically, he had finally, I guess, passed all the tests that he needed to pass, and so he basically become an immortal. Okay. Now, he kind of, so he thought about what the fortune teller said, and he went back to see the fortune teller, basically to challenge him, say, hey, what you told me was wrong. I didn't die of starvation, right? So, then the fortune teller says, no, I wasn't mistaken back then. Your face had the characteristics of a man who would die of hunger, but now your face tells me that you are destined to become an immortal and will be given a large monastery by the emperor, and your disciples will spread your teachings all over. Okay, so, but basically, yeah, like we always say, there's no need to seek a fortune teller, because they won't be accurate. I mean, they can tell you exactly, what your features are showing, but we can change. The key is that we can change our fate through our cultivation. Okay, so that's the key. All right. Now, the thing is, when he went back to this fortune teller, he had a little bit of a malicious intent in that he wanted to show him that, oh, he was wrong. But so because of that, he had to face a few more kind of mental tests, if you will, trials. But okay. So eventually though, let's see. He did a lot of, so over the next 7 years, he did a lot of other, good deeds and things like that. And eventually, because he had to there were droughts, and he would pray for rain, and, they would get rain. And so, the emperor was impressed and brought him in as his religious advisor. Okay. So, now here's a little bit of a story that, he made this wager with this Buddhist monk. Okay. So there's this White Cloud Monastery where this Buddhist monk was, and this monk's name is Bai Ying. Okay, so basically the empress was pregnant, and he predicted, or Chu Jianxun predicted, that it would be a boy. So the emperor, of course, is happy to hear that. But the empress, wanted to consult with this Buddhist monk, because the Buddhist monk, he can do his divination, and he can know what the outcome would be. And so he said it would be a girl. And so they made a wager. Say that, well, if the Buddhist monk was wrong, right, if it turned out to be a boy, then he would give up the White Cloud Monastery to Chu Jianxun. Okay. And Chu Jianxun said, okay, so if it turned out to be a girl, then, you can take my head. You can kill me, right? So basically, it turned out that, Chu Jianxun won, although, he kind of cheated, but he won. Okay. So regardless, okay. So, now, so once he took over, there's this other stuff going on in terms of, the monk didn't want to give up the monastery so easily, but anyways, he ended up giving it up. And so Chu Jianxun then is running this monastery, and then later on there are a lot of people start showing up to basically, to cultivate, to learn and cultivate there. And so he's talking to them, says, we have to seek the Tao. So this, one of the things he's talking about is seek the Tao naturally, right? Do not force yourself, right? He's talking about these new monks that showed up. Says, do what you can do, right? Do not attempt what is beyond you at the moment. Some are destined to walk the highest path, others the middle, and yet others the lower path. Accept your path and walk it diligently. Right? Those who walk the lower path should not envy the ones who walk the higher path. This is, for example, talking about like the 3 vehicles before, right? The 3 different paths. All right. So not everyone will become an immortal in his or her lifetime. Right? Even if you do not attain immortality, you will have been a good person and build up a good foundation. Okay. So basically, everyone does what they can, and it's the case that everyone is different. They're at different levels. And so we can't expect everyone to be at that same high level. And so, but as long as we are diligent in our practice at whatever level we're at, we can still succeed. Okay. So, we can still achieve. All right. One of the reasons why actually, Chu Zhangcun wanted to take over this monastery, this Buddhist monastery, and basically become a Taoist monastery. He saw that the monk Baiying was kind of living in, you say, comfort at that monastery, because it was supported by the emperor, right? So, and he saw that while he did a lot of good works, that it would be wasted if he continued to kind of live or cultivate this way. So that's why. He kind of forced the monk and the other monks to go out and kind of experience a little bit more hardship. Okay. Let's see, what else? Okay. So, okay. Then there is another test afterwards. The empress tried to poison him, basically to see if he's really an immortal and stuff. Okay. So they didn't succeed. But, so he kind of proved that he was really an immortal. Okay. So in the end, it is said in this story, in this book, that Chu Zhangcun wrote the book Journey to the West. So that's another famous, book about, and it's basically, it says it drew on his experience of the obstacles he encountered during his training. The main characters in this book, are, basically there's a monk, there's a monkey, right, which is like the Monkey King, and also a pig. Okay, so, but, these characters, they represent facets of the mind, actually. Okay, so this is kind of describing, the mind, of a cultivator, or during the process of cultivation. Okay, so, and then Baiying, so he kind of presented his book to the Buddhist monk Baiying, who was inspired to write another book, which about the experiences and visions that occur on the path to enlightenment, which is the Legend of the Gods. Or actually, if you look for it now, you see there's a book called Investiture of the Gods. Okay, this is Feng Ban. Okay, so I've read all these books, and they're very good reads, but it's kind of very long too. But it's kind of interesting. I don't know if this is true that they wrote these books, but anyways, that's kind of an interesting thing. All right. Okay. So sorry, kind of overtime here. All right. Finally. So successful cultivation requires that we have the sincerity and the resolve or willpower, right, to dissolve our ego, to refine our temper, to get rid of cravings and attachments, to correct our deficiencies, to relinquish comfort and complacency, to endure hardships, to persevere and see it through to the end. So these basically, all these masters, these Taoist masters, they did all these things. Okay. So these are the things that really, and what we've been talking about for the past few weeks of, how we can return, complete our cultivation and return back to heaven, whether it's the, 4 courses of cultivation or, the 5 requirements, to return to heaven. These are, those cultivation methods. And, by doing all these things, then we can actually succeed, just like, these Taoist masters. The hardships that we encounter today, some of them might be the same or similar, but, others might be different because, we're in different times, and everyone's karma is different. But, as long as, we have to have that, basically that sincerity and that resolve or willpower to do it. Okay. And then, I hope, then there should be no doubt, in our mind that we can achieve it. Okay. So, that said, that's it. I asked if I had said anything, wrong or, not well enough. I asked the Buddhists for forgiveness and also for, transmitting masters and lectures corrections. Thank you. Any questions? Sorry, I kind of went over time. This is it's a good, if you have a chance, you can read this book. It's very good. It's because, again, it's kind of written as a novel. So it's like this story. It's very interesting. If you're into, cultivation and all that. But they do talk about, internal alchemy. And so they use some terms, in there, that refer, that are used in that context. If you take it out of context, then, you'll misinterpret it. So, but, we don't really, our emphasis today, we don't really talk about the internal type of alchemy that they talk about in there as much, because it's more, you can say that's more technical type of cultivation, and most people today, would have difficulty trying to do that. So that's why today, the Buddhists tell us, very simple. You just, right? Get rid of our bad temper, and, correct our deficiencies or mistakes, or faults. So, at the very simple level, and then perform, just perform merits and cultivate our virtues. That's it. But as long as we can do it well, then that's basically good enough. Okay.
Good. A few short comments.
Yes, Master Lin.
Yeah, just a few comments here. I think a lot of good story here, but those immortals has gone through a lot of difficulties, challenges, and hardship to become immortals. And for us, in our lives, in our daily life, we're going to facing a lot of challenges and difficulties, especially during the pandemic period. So you can see a lot of people are suffering. So God and Buddhas are testing us, see where we are going from here. So it's important when we are facing the difficulty challenges, just tell ourselves, Buddhas are always with us. So those are the tests for all of us to pass through those tests. And in the meantime, I think I know it's kind of late, a couple of comments. I know in the life, those immortals, sometimes they give up their properties, wealth, whatever they have to cultivate. But in this lifetime, a holy teacher and also Buddha always tell us, it's based on our abilities. Don't go beyond our abilities. And we need to have wisdom to do what we have to do, okay? And second comment is talk about steepness. So in the every day, we need to make sure we do not raise a single thought, and then do not move the wave of our mind or heart, and maintain a still, clear, calm states every day. That's what we have to do to bring our true nature out. And last one, those immortals, they knew, okay, a lot of karmas, what happened to them is from previous lives. So everything is cause and effect. So once they know what they have done in previous life, so they are willing to accept the suffering of whatever hardship this lifetime. So we can go through the same thing, and we all can become immortals or Buddhas in these lifetimes. You really want to do it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's, even though we don't know our past karma, but, we understand the principles. Once we know the principles, then we know that there is a cause, there's a reason why things are the way they are. And so in that way, we can still accept it. But again, we can try to change things, but but of course we do it through cultivation, through, our virtues and our merits. And, the other thing that you notice with these masters is that, even though they're trying to achieve immortality for themselves, but all along the way, they're still helping others. They're trying to help others achieve as well. And that's also our goal. Our part of our mission is to not just help ourselves to become, to attain the Tao in the end, but also try to help others. At least, if they, maybe not, if they're not able to attain the Tao, at least help them, guide them to a better path. Yeah.